I'm starting today with possibly the most famous ghosty girlie of all time, the White Lady of the Tower of London. Now this White Lady is a well-known ghost, and she is believed to haunt the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. According to ancient legend, the White Lady was once a woman who was wrongly accused of a crime and executed within the tower. There are several tales that claim the origins of her though, including one about a young woman falsely accused of stealing from the Queen's apartments, who was despite her innocence. Another story suggests that the White Lady could be the ghost of Anne Boleyn, who was executed in the tower in 1536 and was known for wearing white. The White Lady is often described as a serene and beautiful woman with long hair, wandering in a long gown. Many people claim to have seen her kneeling at the chapel altar, and some have reported feeling a sense of calmness or comfort in her presence. She is said to have once stood at a window, waving to people at the building on the other side just to freak them out. She's also known to linger in your peripheral vision, leading you to think somebody's in the room with you until you turn and see nobody. Her presence is typically announced by an overwhelming smell of perfume, so strong that it's actually made several tower visitors sick. A few visitors report being tapped on the shoulder, only to turn around and see nothing but a wisp of white. Despite the lack of historical evidence supporting the existence of the White Lady, her legend is still extremely popular. Even today, visitors and tourists to the Tower of London report sightings of her ghostly figure just wandering around the halls, hanging out. It's just wild to me that it's been how many years and we still don't know for sure who she is, and nobody has been able to help her move on from this mortal plane and into the next one. She's on my personal bucket list of ghosts I want to meet in person someday. Seriously. Time to take to the seas with our next legend, which also happens to be up there in terms of popularity. The ghost of the Flying Dutchman has been haunting sailors for centuries. This legendary cursed ghost ship is said to be doomed to sail the seas forever without ever reaching port. And the story dates back to the 17th century and has been retold in many forms over the years, with each retelling adding to its haunting allure. According to maritime folklore, the Dutch captain of the Flying Dutchman, try saying that 5 times fast, was cursed for his arrogance and blasphemy. Now the ghost ship appears as a spectral apparition to other sailors, accompanied by eerie lights and strange sounds. The crew of the Flying Dutchman is said to be made up of ghosts and other supernatural beings, condemned to sail the seas until the end of time. Now I'm not new to ghost ship stories. I've talked about the Mary Celeste, the Patriot, the Hunley, and more over the last year, but the idea of a ship that just vanishes is terrifying to me. The legend of the Flying Dutchman has also been the inspiration for a lot of works of art, lots of literature, music, film. There's a whole Wikipedia article about the inspirations and adaptations of this legend that includes melodramas, appearances on SpongeBob, Spider-Man cartoons, Disney comic books, a 1951 film, even the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Heck, even the Efteling amusement park in the Netherlands has a roller coaster called De Vliegende Hollander, or the Flying Dutchman, which features a captain named Willem van der Decken. It has definitely made its mark on society, and once again, we still don't have concrete knowledge about the ship or its occupants. One of these days, somebody's going to be exploring the ocean and stumble upon the perfect shipwreck that's going to make total sense. Look, somebody needs to tell their descendants to come back to this video in 50 years or something and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Please? Well, there is technically no historical evidence to support the existence of said ship. The legend has endured for centuries and has become an important part of maritime folklore. It's a haunting reminder that the sea is a place of great mystery and wonder, but it's also capable of spawning great horror. Seriously, there's so much about the oceans that we still don't know and might never understand. Which reminds me of the age-old question, which do you fear more, the ocean or space? Since I'm more likely to wind up in an ocean, that's my answer, but you let me know yours in the comments. Alrighty, who's heard of Odysseus before? If not, it is Cliff's Notes time, everybody. Time to throw it back to the Greek and Roman history elective I regretted taking during my first year of university. It was hard, first thing in the morning, and overall just kinda dry. But I made a really good friend out of the struggle of keeping each other awake, so there's that. In Greek and Roman mythology, Odysseus, also known by the Latin variant Ulysses, is a legendary king of Ithaca and the hero of Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. We all know it. Odysseus plays a key role in Homer's Iliad as well, and other works in that same epic cycle. The works of Homer provide some of the earliest examples of ghost stories, ergo fitting the ancient theme of today. I almost dressed up retro, but at the same time I didn't want to wear a corset today. Well, in the underworld where Odysseus had encountered his companion Elpenor, he also came across the spirit of his mother, Anticlea. Unaware she had passed while he had been on campaign, Odysseus tried to embrace her, but was unable to, which, oof, that is rough. In Homer's description of the dead, it appears that spirits could hear the living and receive their offerings. However, they were only able to actually interact with the living after drinking human redness, which Odysseus provided. How generous. His mission upon entering the underworld had been to consult the ghost of the seer, Tiresias. While there, Odysseus also encounters spirits of brides, unmarried men, virginal girls, men killed in battle who still wear their red-soaked armor, etc., etc. Pardon Excusez-moi, this is starting to sound like it influenced early vampire lore. Only gaining abilities after consuming the life essence of humans? I'm down to give that a try. I feel like I spill enough of my own life source whenever I perform certain sideshow acts that I could probably bottle up enough, go to a cemetery, ingest it, and see what happens. Yes, I'm a bit of a weirdo if that wasn't obvious enough, and part vampire. Long story. But seriously, the variety of spirits just hanging out is wild. I'd like to give that a try someday. It'd be fun. To continue on with this trend of ancient waybackness, how about next up we visit an Athens haunted house? In a theme park setting, I'm trying to figure out what that would look like. Probably lots of statues, a really wonky family, somebody droning on and on and on about their beliefs, but let me know in the comments what you think you could add to it. Roman lawyer and busy letter writer Pliny the Younger told a story of a chain-rattling ghost in Athens in perhaps the most famous haunted house of the ancient world. Pliny related the spooky yarn in a letter to his friend Licinius Sura. In the letter, Pliny said that the large house was haunted by the sound of clanking chains at night. People inside could hear the chains getting louder and louder as I'm moving closer to them. Now I can see where the Ebenezer Scrooge ghosts got their inspiration, and so forth and so on, because ghosts holding chains is a very well-known trope nowadays. The spirit making the demonic noise turned out to be a disheveled old man with a long scraggly beard and hair. The phantom pensioner eventually forced one set of owners to sell up until a philosopher named Athenodorus bought the house at a very low price. In today's economy, I know I would happily buy a house with a ghostie if I could afford the price. Like, that isn't even a downside. I'm sure we could be friends. So Athenodorus, hearing about the resident ghost, decided to sit and wait for it one night. He moved his bed into the main area of the house, near the front door, and sent his servants home. He's like, we're gonna do this on my own, let's see what happens. While reading in the middle of the night, Athenodorus started to hear the dreaded ghost. The sound of the chains grew louder and louder. When he turned around, he saw the specter of the chain-rattling man. Now, he was amazed to see the spirit beckon him outside into the courtyard. The curious philosopher followed him out and saw the apparition vanish. The next day, he had the spot where the ghost disappeared dug up. The skeleton of a man, bound in chains and with signs of violent death, was found beneath the surface. The remains were given a proper funeral and the haunting ceased forever. Well, there you have it, folks. If you help a spirit pass on, or if you leave their place of burial in peace without disturbing them, unless they ask you to do so, you're good. Don't mess with Ouija boards, don't tempt fate, you can exist in peace. Simple stuff. And finally today we have the ghost of Nero. He was part of the first imperial dynasty of Rome, consisting of the first 5 emperors. Other famous names include Caligula, Tiberius, you know the rest. While Augustus is praised for being an accomplished ruler, folks like Caligula and Nero were infamous for their cruelty and excesses. I still can't believe that to this day people are still named after Nero. Like, why would you want to give your offspring such a cursed name? My name has been sadly bastardized by Amazon in my lifetime, so whenever I personally learn that somebody born after the boom of Amazon Alexa was given the name, I severely judge the parents. Like, why the bleep would you want to set up your spawn for a lifetime of ridicule? Like, it's beyond me. Don't get me wrong, I love my name, but not the Amazon jokes that come with it. Sorry, I know. Back on topic I go. Among the many dynasties that ruled over this sprawling empire, the Julio-Claudian dynasty stands out as one of the most unsettling for sure. This dynasty, which spanned from 27 BC to 68 AD, was a roller coaster ride of power, intrigue, and brutality. The Romans were keen to believe that their most oppressive rulers would continue to terrorize them after their deaths. Pliny the Younger, y'all remember him, recorded a story of how Nero's biographer, Gaius Fannius, was interrupted in his work by his own subject. So one dark, eerie night, Fannius was busy penning the next installment of his life of Nero, when Nero himself sat down and started reading aloud from the previous chapters. Then Nero vanished, scaring Fannius half to death. The author knew that, oh boy, this is a sign, it's the end of my life, and he was right. Fannius died soon after, before he could even finish the biography. How about we kick things off with a decapitated saint and a talking head? Sounds like fun? I thought so. When the Vikings were raiding England in the 9th century, a saint named Edmund turned himself over to the invaders rather than have his people be overrun. According to the Lives of Saints, it was written by an author named Alfric of a word I cannot say. Now, Alfric was an English abbot who wrote a lot of autobiographies, a lot of homilies, and a lot of biblical commentaries in the 10th and 11th centuries. He tried to convert the Viking invaders. Edmund tried to convert the Viking invaders, and in response they tormented and beheaded him, throwing his head into the forest. Contemporary Christian burial customs dictated the head must be buried with the body, for sake of wholeness, anticipating the resurrection of the dead at the Last Judgment. A witness who had seen the beheading had an idea where to look, so a search party traveled the woods calling out for Edmund. Eventually, hearing the head itself respond, "Here, here, here!" They find Edmund's head, which was speaking to them, miraculously being guarded by a wolf, which kept the other little critters at bay. After the head was recovered, Edmund was given a martyr's burial. Years later, the body was exhumed from the local churchyard to be moved to a nicer location, and apparently the body looked almost entirely healed, and the head had reattached itself to the body with just a thin red line around his neck to show where he had once been beheaded. No thank you, little too creepy. Ugh. Decapitation. Next up, a forgotten saint who haunts a blacksmith's dreams. Alfred wrote of a different saint, Swithun, whose gravesite had been forgotten by his community. So to ensure his veneration and remembrance, Swithun first appeared in a vision to a local blacksmith, telling him where to find the grave and how to know it's his. There's an iron ring on the coffin lid, and if you can pull it open, then all this has been true. The blacksmith was too scared to follow through, however, and an increasingly frustrated ghostie had to visit him 3 times before this guy finally went to the grave. Well, political turmoil in the local church prevented the original body from being moved inside the church, so his spirit was like, okay, let's try something else. He began appearing to others in the community, telling diseased people to visit his tomb to be healed. Eventually, the king noticed the healings and told the bishop to reinter the body within the church. After the body was moved, more and more people came to the tomb for healing. It was written that so much so that the walls were lined with the crutches and stools that had belonged to those who had been healed of their physical ailment. Look, I'm all for a ghostie doing good, but that's just a little wild. But hey, he got his point across. Here's a doozy: the determined ghost of a vengeful father. An Icelandic family saga known as the Saga of the People of Eyri catalogs several hauntings in medieval Iceland where the walking dead, called Drog in Old Norse, sometimes return with malicious intent. One of the tales is about a man named Arnkel and his father, Thorolf Haldfoot, who died sitting up, eyes open, at the family's dining room table. Arnkel warned his family not to walk in front of the man's line of sight. He covered up the face and ordered a hole to be cut in the wall through which Thorolf could be carried out, likely to confuse the body in case the undead tried to return home. Both of the oxen who carried the body to his grave died, as did many animals who went near his burial site, and soon Thorolf began haunting the valley, causing farming families to flee left and right. Arnkel decided to move the body, which was all undecayed and most evil to look upon. After they moved him to a new gravesite, they built a wall around it in an attempt to keep Thorolf contained. Soon after, Arnkel was killed, and even the wall couldn't keep the ghost from returning to attempt to avenge his son. Another group of men exhumed Thorolf's body yet again, and this time they burned it, scattering the ashes in the sea. Some of the ashes, however, were caught in a wind, and a cow who accidentally ingested them later gave birth to a bull who killed a man who had been one of Arnkel's nemesis. Take that, folks. I love that kind of spiteful revenge. The Irish Banshee is a supernatural being in Irish folklore who is said to foretell death with a mournful wail. She is a female spirit, and she appears in lament to announce the forthcoming death of a family member. And she's been documented since like the Middle Ages. Like, she has been around for a minute. I'm sure you know all about her. Historians have traced the first stories, possibly, of the Banshee to the 8th century, and they were based on a tradition where women sang a sorrowful song to lament someone's death. They were known as keeners, and since they accepted booze as payment, they were said to be sinners and punished by being doomed to become banshees. Now, according to the mythology, if you spot one, she's going to vanish into a cloud of mist, and this action creates a noise similar to that of a bird flapping its wings. Now, once again, banshees don't cause death, they're just a warning of it. But when you associate a thing with another, when translated, banshee means fairy woman, and they are connected to the mythologically significant tumuli, a type of burial ground that rises up from the earth into a mound, and they've dotted the Irish countryside for hundreds of years. Very similar to like fairy villages. Now, descriptions of what banshees look like vary, but a common theme shows them having long, flowing hair, dressed in black or gray. Don't look at me. Some reports have even seen a woman with gray hair, white hair, black hair, or red hair. Whew, Biggie Brunette saved me just now. She's been reported as being old and ugly, or young and beautiful, but they're always noted as taking a form resembling a female-looking figure. Lady Fanshawe, a 16th century writer, claimed to have had a first-hand encounter. Her account describes a banshee as having red hair and a ghastly complexion. Lady Wilde, writing in the 19th century in Ancient Legends of Ireland, states the size of the banshee is another physical feature that differs between regional accounts. Though some accounts of her standing unnaturally tall are recorded, the majority of tales that describe her height state the banshee's stature as short, anywhere between 1 and 4 feet. Whew, once again, I am 5 feet, we're good. Her exceptional shortness often goes alongside the description of her as an old woman, though it may also be intended to emphasize her state as a fairy creature. Originally, many believed that the Irish banshee only visited those coming from a noble, powerful family, or pure Irish families, because traditionally there were only 5 major Irish families. Let's see if I get them all right. The O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Connors, the O'Grady's, and the Kavanaghs. However, it is believed that intermarriage has long since extended this selective list. And yes, although a visit from an Irish banshee may not seem the most welcome of encounters, the appearance of the banshee was seen as a fairy privilege. There's a wider Celtic tradition as well, by the way. Folks have documented similar spirits in Wales, Scotland, in the Highlands in particular. Accounts of banshees have also been found in Norman literature, but it's the Irish one that is the most famous. Nowadays, beliefs in the banshees are not common, like we're talking modern times. But we still talk about her. If I said like, hey, have you heard about a banshee? People are like, oh yeah, wail like a banshee. Like, it's still a common phrase. And finally for today, on December 4th of 1872, a British-American ship called the Mary Celeste was found abandoned and floating in the Atlantic Ocean. The Canadian brigantine Die Grazia found her in a disheveled but seaworthy condition under partial sail and with her lifeboat missing. Now, she was found with her cargo fully intact, minus the lifeboat, which appeared to have been boarded in an orderly fashion. But why? We may never know, because nobody on board was ever heard from again. Gonna backtrack for a moment here. The Mary Celeste set sail from New York, bound for Italy, in November of 1872. The ship was manned by Captain Benjamin Briggs and 7 crew members, including Briggs' wife and their offspring. A little bit of history on the captain. Benjamin Briggs was born in Wareham, Massachusetts on April 24th of 1835, one of 5 sons of famous sea captain Nathan Briggs. Now, all but one of the sons went to sea, to becoming captains, so family traditions. Benjamin was an observant Christian who read the Bible regularly and often bore witness to his faith at prayer meetings. And in 1862, he married his cousin, Sarah, and enjoyed a Mediterranean honeymoon on board his ship, the Forest King. Now they had 2 offspring, and by the time they gave birth to the second one, Briggs had achieved a high standing within his profession. And he was like, maybe I want to retire, maybe I want to spend time at home with my offspring. But, no. That didn't happen. The original plan was to go into business with his brother, Oliver, because he had also gotten a little tired of wandering around. But it didn't happen. They were like, let's invest in a ship instead. Oliver invested in Julia A. Halleck and Benjamin in the Mary Celeste. Now, supplies on board the Mary Celeste were set to last for 6 months. And there was like some really luxurious items as well. Talking like a sewing machine, a piano. Historians and commentators generally agree that to abandon such a worthy ship, something crazy or alarming must have happened. But the last entry on the ship's daily log reveals nothing unusual, and inside the ship, everything's been in order. Theories over the years have included mutiny, pirate attack, even a giant octopus or sea monster. But the cause behind this ghost ship remains unsolved. Now, if you want to talk about the origins of the ship, the Mary Celeste was built in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, and launched under British registration as Amazon in 1861. It was constructed of locally felled timber with 2 masts and was rigged and was carvel built, the hull planking flush rather than overlapping. She was transferred to American ownership and registration in 1868, and that's when she got her new name. After that, she sailed uneventfully until the 1872 voyage. At the salvage hearings following her recovery, the court's officers considered a lot of possibilities of foul play. But no convincing evidence supported any of the theories. The inconclusive nature of the hearings fostered continued speculation as to what had happened to the ship's occupants. Like, there's been a lot of theories, folks. I know I talked about the obvious ones already, but it was like, oh, maybe the booze fumes from the cargo did something. Maybe there was a submarine earthquake. Maybe there was a giant squid. And our favorite, paranormal intervention. Now, the ship was found, so after the hearings, she continued on in service under new owners. But in 1885, her captain deliberately wrecked her off of the coast of Haiti as part of an attempted insurance fraud. But the story of the abandonment, well, it lives on, because we still don't know what happened. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a story about it. Like, it's pretty famous. And then
Number 5 on this list is the dancing plague of 1518. That's right, guys, you heard that right. A plague about dancing. Honestly, I'd never heard of this before, and in my whole time working on this channel, this is actually the coolest and strangest thing that I've ever come across. So in Strasbourg, Alsace, which is now modern day France, in the year 1518, from July all the way to September, people just started dancing. For months, hundreds of people were dancing in the streets of France, and they couldn't stop. It's said that one woman started dancing in the streets one day, and then some more came, and they just kept going for months with absolutely no reason at all. People started thinking that this was the cause of a demonic possession or some ghost that was making people lose their minds, but in actuality, nobody had any idea why these people were doing this. This wasn't a casual waltz either. These people were going hard. These people went so hard that they literally danced themselves to death. I can't possibly imagine going so hard at the club that I died, but that's basically what happened here with these people. There are actual claims that at one point in the heat of all this dancing, up to 15 people were dying per day just from dancing. This death kept happening, and these people would continue dancing around all of these bodies. This plague went on until September, when it just suddenly subsided, and that was that. No explanation, no reasoning behind it. They just went hard for several months and then stopped. That's why everyone thinks that something demonic has to be the cause of all this. Some people have speculated that food poisoning may have played some role, but that just doesn't make any sense to me because it went on for months. Seriously, folks, please comment down below what you think about this or some theories about why this happened, because it has me pretty baffled. Number 4 on this list is the lost city of Atlantis. Atlantis is a city that is considered to be a utopian society in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It was first documented by Plato in two of his works, Timaeus and Critias. Now, even though Atlantis is often referred to as a city these days, back then Plato described it as an island. This island was located in the Atlantic and was said to be pretty massive, bigger than Asia Minor and Libya combined. This island, or city, was extremely wealthy and had a surplus of resources. This is what led them to being considered a utopia and a highly advanced group. Now, Plato describes a great battle between these Atlanteans and the Athenians and says that after lots of hard fighting, the Athenians eventually prevailed in the war. Then, several massive earthquakes caused the earth to shift, and the entire island of Atlantis was swallowed up by the sea and now rests at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. Many people have speculated on how accurate these tales from Plato are, with experts believing that this could just all be a myth. However, the legend of Atlantis started to circulate around Europe many years later, and people began searching for this lost city. Nobody has found it to this day, but that doesn't mean that it never existed. Maybe we're just thinking about it the wrong way. Some people have thought that this entire city of Atlantis could have been aliens coming down to Earth, and that potentially this island was never really an island to begin with. Plato does describe the society as being a utopia, and an explanation for that would be aliens that have far better technology than we do. Maybe when this island apparently disappeared, these aliens just left. Now, that does beg the question, if they're so advanced, how on earth could the ancient Athenians beat them in a battle? Which I do think is a very fair point. I do believe that Plato and the people after him have exaggerated this story, and the full truth has probably been lost in history. But I also believe that this tale didn't just come out of nowhere, and something potentially paranormal could be at hand. Number 3 on this list is the Coral Castle. The Coral Castle is a limestone structure located in Florida. It is super unique and has these strange limestone rocks that have been carved into various figures. Now, there's nothing inherently cursed about this place. However, similar to the pyramids or Stonehenge that we covered in our last video, people wonder how on earth this place was made. Edward Leeds Scallon was a self-taught Russian engineer who came to America. He lived from 1887 to 1951 and is credited with being the creator of the Coral Castle. What's absolutely crazy about this story, though, is he constructed this structure all by himself. This is what baffles people to this day. How on earth is it possible that one man in the early 1900s was capable of moving these limestones and carving them the way that they are single-handedly? These stones weigh thousands of pounds, and there's no way that a man would ever be able to lift these things with sheer strength. Now, he was an engineer, and people have speculated that it was potentially the use of magnetism, something that he was fascinated with in his life. When asked how he was able to do this, he replied, "I understand the laws of weight and leverage, and I know the secrets of the people who built the pyramids." This kind of makes sense, but with the pyramids, they had thousands of people working on them all at once. You were only one man. People have theorized that Edward actually had some supernatural abilities that he was hiding from the public. This could honestly be believable because his personality was apparently extremely eccentric and very strange. However Edward was able to construct the Coral Castle, it truly is remarkable. Number 2 on this list is the oldest ghost story of all time. Ever wonder when all this started? When did humans start believing in ghosts, or when did we have our first encounter with a poltergeist? Well, a 3,500-year-old tablet may have the earliest depiction of a ghost as we know them today. This is a small tablet that was made in ancient Babylon and is considered by some experts to be one of the first, if not the first, written depiction of a ghost. The ghostly drawings could be easily missed, and you have to really pay attention if you're going to see it. An expert on the subject, Irvin Finkel, says, "You'd probably never give it a second thought because the area where the drawings are looks like it's got no writing, but when you examine it and hold it under a lamp, those figures leap out at you across time in the most startling way." The tablet goes into detail on how to get rid of ghosts and calls for an exorcist. It explains how this exorcist must make figurines of a man and a woman, and also speak the words of Mesopotamian god Shemesh to get rid of the ghost. There's also a warning to the reader to not turn around, potentially an indicator that a ghost could be behind you, or you could risk getting sucked into the underworld if your focus isn't steady. This tablet also lists a bunch of materials that can be used in rituals and that can be used to prevent ghosts from appearing in the first place. This is super interesting because it means that ghosts and spirits visiting the living can be traced all the way back to the ancient Mesopotamians. We were having paranormal events happen to us thousands of years ago, and the action of exorcising demons and ghosts, it all started with these guys. One could argue that they were the founders and innovators of a lot of our ghostly practices and knowledge to this day. Number 1 on this list is Oak Island. Oak Island is a very mysterious island that has been shrouded in lore for years. It's a privately owned island off the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada. It has so many rumors surrounding it that it's even got its own television show called The Curse of Oak Island that has 8 seasons under its belt. This is a reality television show by the History Channel where they explore the mysteries of Oak Island, and considering they're on season 8, it's fair to say that there have been quite a few mysteries. The one that's gained the most international fame, though, is the Money Pit. The Money Pit is supposedly a place on Oak Island where there's a plethora of buried treasure waiting for somebody to dig it up. This treasure was left by the pirate Captain William Kidd, who lived from 1645 to 1701. There's said to be vast riches here, however no one's been able to find it up until this point. This is largely because finding buried treasure can be extremely difficult, but also due to the curse that surrounds it. The curse that hovers over this treasure states that 7 men will die in search of the treasure before it's found. To this day, there have actually been 6 deaths associated with this buried treasure. That means that if one more person was to die whilst they're looking for it, then the treasure would either reveal itself, or the next person who goes looking for it would be the one who finds it. Problem with this is that there's one more person who needs to die, and I don't think that anyone wants to be that unlucky number 7. Other than this pirate treasure, there's also rumored to be some extremely valuable and mystical items here. Never before seen Shakespearean plays, the Holy Grail, and the Ark of the Covenant have all been linked to Oak Island. If searching for cursed treasure is your cup of tea, and this is definitely the place for you. Number 5 on this list is the pyramids. The Great Pyramids are located in Egypt and are some of the oldest structures on the entire planet. The pyramids are said to have been constructed over 4,500 years ago and were made to act as the burial grounds for the pharaohs of Egypt. The Great Pyramid, which is the biggest of all of them, is over 450 feet tall with a base of over 750 feet wide. That's a really big structure and acted as the largest structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. It should also be noted that the pyramids are made up of massive stone blocks. For the Great Pyramid, it's estimated that 2.3 million stone blocks are what keep it standing to this day. Every block of the Great Pyramid also weighs approximately 2.5 to 15 tons. Just a reminder that a ton is 2,000 pounds, so there were some blocks that could have weighed close to 30,000 pounds. All of this is completely unbelievable. So unbelievable, in fact, that people think something else might have been at play in making them. It's currently believed that these were made by humans. It took thousands of humans to construct, but when you think about how monstrous these creations are and the technology that humans had back in that day, it becomes very hard to believe that we were capable of doing that. This has led people to the theory of aliens. These pyramids are also built to face the precise magnetic north, which makes people wonder how the ancient Egyptians could have possibly got that information. The theory is that these aliens came down and built the pyramids, and the ancient Egyptians mistook them for gods. This is why in some ancient Egyptian drawings we see gods flying around. The Daily Star also reports the speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second, and the geographic coordinates for the Great Pyramid coincide with that if you just move the decimal points over several spaces. They believe that this was a clue from the aliens for us to discover later. Frankly, as cool as aliens are, I would honestly rather believe that humans made the pyramids. It's pretty cool to know that almost 5,000 years ago, our species was able to make something like that. I feel like I have a little bit of pride for those ancient Egyptians. Number 4 on this list is the Bermuda Triangle. You've obviously heard about the Bermuda Triangle before and the lore that accompanies this extremely mysterious place. If you don't know what it is though, then the History Channel classifies it as a mythical section of the Atlantic Ocean roughly bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, where dozens of ships and airplanes have disappeared. These disappearances have continued to this day, but started hundreds of years ago. Basically since people started crossing over the Atlantic Ocean and records of ships were being kept. In fact, it's believed that William Shakespeare's The Tempest was based on a real shipwreck that happened at the Bermuda Triangle. So legends of this place can at least be dated back to when he wrote that play, which was in the early 1600s. In 1918, the legend of the Bermuda Triangle reached an all-time high when the USS Cyclops, a massive ship from the United States, sank to the bottom of the ocean. This ship was over 500 feet long and had over 300 people on board. It was a horrible catastrophe when it happened. What made this even more stupefying was that the ship had the capability
ability to send out a distress signal and didn't do so, making everyone wonder what on earth happened. What has caused all these shipwrecks and plane crashes over the years is still unknown, but there are some theories. Some people believe that the Bermuda Triangle is home to a massive sea monster, potentially the Kraken or something like that. A massive tentacled monster with the ability to drag a ship down to the depths of the ocean and eat all who are on board. Some people believe that there may even be a wormhole that is out there in the middle of the ocean. A wormhole is a ripple through space-time which experts believe would act as a portal to another time and dimension. The Bermuda Triangle has also been called the Devil's Triangle before, indicating that some people believe this place could be the work of the devil or some strong sea demons out there. Nobody really knows the true cause of the Bermuda Triangle, and considering it's been talked about for hundreds of years, we may never know. Number 3 on this list is Stonehenge. Stonehenge is very similar to the pyramids, having been built roughly 5,000 years ago and being so difficult to construct that people think some sort of paranormal events must have transpired. Located in Wiltshire, England, Stonehenge is a monument that features massive stones standing vertically that weigh roughly 25 tons. That's 50,000 pounds of weight that these monstrous stones have to them. The monument is oriented towards the sunrise on the summer solstice, but other than that, not a lot of people know why it's there or what its purpose was. Now it is owned by the Crown and considered a heritage site, but still people wonder, why was it put there in the first place? Some theories involve its effect on sound waves. When two people are playing a pipe and you walk around the stones, then you'll notice an effect where they cancel each other out. Some people have even chalked it up as being an ancient sex symbol, believe it or not. However, the most popular theory is similar to the pyramids in believing that it's aliens. I tend to believe aliens were capable of this more than the periods, to be honest. They are certainly arranged in a strange fashion and they have no set purpose. How is it possible for humans to lug stones that are 50,000 pounds to a location where there aren't that many stones to begin with? Stonehenge just screams like the sort of place where something paranormal happened, in my opinion. Number 2 on this list is Jesus. I feel like this wouldn't be a complete list if I didn't include one of the most mysterious events that occurred in all of history. Jesus lived 2,000 years ago during a tumultuous time. His life was one that we all remember and has inspired millions of people since he passed. His death is where something paranormal may have taken place though. Jesus died by crucifixion at the hands of the Romans. This was ordered by the governor Pilate, who felt the pressures from the Roman people and felt like he had to give in to them. The crucifixion process lasted for over 6 hours apparently, until Jesus finally gave his last breath. After he died, he was taken to his tomb, which was closed off and shut by a massive stone. This tomb was guarded by several officers for days, until on the 3rd day it said that the rock moved and Jesus ascended from that tomb to heaven. His body was no longer in the tomb on this day, and the belief that he went to heaven spread throughout the land. Now, a question a lot of people ask is, how do we know for sure that his body was gone and that tomb was actually empty? Now, we know that because after he was gone and his followers were claiming he was resurrected, then the best way for the Romans to stop that theory would have been to produce the body, which they were never capable of doing. So where did it go? Well, it's widely believed that Jesus ascended to heaven, that God acted and brought his son home to him. Maybe this event is less of a paranormal event and more of a miracle, but I still wanted to include it in this video. Number 1 on this list is the Dropa Stones. The legends of the Dropa Stones is a little bit up in the air, but if it is true, then there is certainly something paranormal afoot. The Dropa Stones are a collection of 716 circular discs that are said to be over 12,000 years old. They have very strange markings on them in a language that hardly anyone is familiar with. These stones were apparently discovered by Chu Pei Te, a Chinese archaeologist in the 1930s who found them inside some abandoned caves. They made their way to a translator who was able to decipher some of the markings and learn that they were referring to humans and aliens. So the theory is that aliens were present 12,000 years ago and had some serious interactions with humans back then. Now, there are a few reasons why we can't take this as being full fact. One, it's possible that the translator who was in charge of deciphering them is wrong. We can't say for sure that they're familiar with the intricacies of language 12,000 years ago. Number 2 is that today, nobody knows where these stones have gone. They aren't in a museum and their location is unknown. And this is really hard to believe considering there are 716 of them and they would have been one of the biggest archaeological finds in years. All of this being said though, if these stones are real and our translator was correct, then that is undeniable proof of an alien presence from 12,000 years ago, which is pretty cool to think about.